The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmets casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get the tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, regroup. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just dropped. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is your Yahoo NFL Week 4 preview, the DFS main slate on Yahoo. So last week was a pretty crazy week as far as there were some landmines as far as injuries and whatnot, and late value hit the slate. So hopefully if you made the right decisions, you had a pretty good week last week. As we looked at some of the backs, we'll take a look back real quick. For Yahoo. Now, one of the guys that was vastly underpriced, as we'll get into later, was Jared Goff. Probably weren't really going there in cash games, though. So if you played Hurts, which was my cash game play, you probably did pretty well last week. As it just Hurts, he just has such a really good floor with his running, and then his passing is just very improved. So he smashed last week. Joe Mixon underperformed. Leonard Fournette, meh. Not very good. And then David Montgomery got hurt. So the running backs have been really bad. Essentially, you get guys in smash spots and they're just not performing. That's what happened with Mixon. That's what happened with Fournette. The Tampa Bay's offense just isn't very good right now. So definitely some things to learn going forward and who we're going to play. And then David Montgomery was in a smash spot, but he got hurt. And, he got 1 point. So is what it is. You can't plan for injuries. Khalil Herbert in his spot smash. But that said, if you play the chalk, and this is why we talk about playing the chalk, it doesn't really matter, right? So, literally in DFS, you would see last week in the Millie Maker, for example, you would see players like David Montgomery, literally till the fourth quarter, he essentially was in one of the top lineups for the Millie Maker last week, all the way up until the fourth quarter, because he was so high owned, even in the Millie Maker. So if you play the chalk, specifically in cash, it doesn't really hurt you. So let's take a look. All right, so yeah, we played David Montgomery. Hurt a little bit, but not entirely in cash, just because the entire field played him as well. So Cooper Kupp had a decent week, not the best week that you expect for a $40 player. Luckily, I didn't play him. Amron, he wasn't going to win any tournaments, but he didn't do horrible. Curtis Samuel. And the same thing with Diggs. What if you paid up for Diggs in tournaments, you weren't winning, but he certainly wasn't the reason that you lost, because Diggs and Amron were both chalk in that game, in their game. So they had two high scoring game environments projected anyway. So the entire field was on now. Curtis Samuel did well. Now, some of the value they hit the slate, Russell Gage was all over him. If you played Russell Gage in cash, you probably cashed last week. That's just kind of how it goes. He vastly outperformed his price. He was $16. And then the other guy was Matt Collins. So if you played Matt Collins, you did quite well, as he was only $11 and scored 32 points. So absolutely smashed, almost 10x the salary. And then, a tight end, it's really a punt. So if you pay down like an Irv Smith type, or Juwan Johnson, not so much, but like if you played Irv Smith, you did pretty well in your tight end. So we typically want to punt tight end and defense. And then the Carolina Panthers. So this was kind of your price point as far as if you entirely pointed. punted the position. If you played the Panthers at $10, you probably did pretty well. They had 16 points. If you played the Las Vegas Raiders, you didn't do so well. So, they got a few points, but it wasn't nothing like the 16 points that the Panthers got. So really the difference between your cash lineup, cashing and not cashing this past week would have been the difference between playing the Panthers at $10 or playing the Raiders at $10. As far as the stack of the week, his stack definitely did not hit because the game really didn't hit. But we will see here, as I mentioned, and the whole reason that I wanted to play this stack was that Jared Goff was vastly underpriced. He was only $20. Well, his pricing is way up this week. So as far as the leverage plays, these are guys that you play at low ownership, but they didn't get there, right? So Eckler was a guy I was willing to play if Herbert played. But with Eckler, he just really hasn't got the touchdowns. He's got the targets, hasn't got the touchdowns. Swift, he got hurt. Kamara, he had opportunities, but really just he hasn't looked the same. So it's something to think about going forward. Jamar Chase, there were touchdowns to be had in that game. They didn't go to Jamar Chase. P. Ryan, Higgins had a touchdown call back. Jalen Waddle, he had a pretty good game. He was low owned, but that game certainly didn't shoot out like you thought it would. And then Mike Williams and Waller. So did a little late swap to Mike Williams. He had a touchdown. I think he had like 9 points. And then Waller could have been a good play had Matt Collins not got all the tutties with Hunter Renfrow out and Devontae Adams. And Josh Jacobs really not having a good day. You would have thought Waller would. Well, it went to Hollins. So this is something that we're going to keep an eye on. But when it comes to tournaments, again, you're going to miss on these more times than not, but you're trying to get stud players at low ownership and hope you hit that right one off or that right stack and that it really goes off for you. So when we take a look at week 4, as we begin to look forward to week 4 of the DFS main slate, we are going to start with the Vegas game totals. So kind of look game by game here on what could potentially some of the pieces that we could like, specifically game environments that we want to target players for stacking and even our cash games and whatnot. So we got the Thursday night game, and then obviously on the main slate. Now this is over at the Sharp app. If you're a DFS Army subscriber, you get a free month to the Sharp app. I got to tell you, they've absolutely been killing player props. This is something where you can really, just by following their top player props, you can profit every single week because they're absolutely been crushing these player props over at the Sharp app. So check it out. If you're a DFS Army subscriber, you get a free month. So we got Los Angeles Chargers in Houston, 44-point game. Herbert really shouldn't have played last week. He didn't look very good. But this could potentially be a get right game for him because he's got Keenan Allen coming back into the lineup. And it's another week removed from his rib injury that he suffered Thursday night going against the Chargers. So good. Keep an eye on that game. I like Keenan Allen. Eckler, again, he's due for some positive regression, but at his price, I'm just not banking on it at this point. Houston, they do look like, from the number standpoint, like a pretty good team, but you look at some of their opponents who have really been struggling on offense, a la the Denver Broncos. I think that has probably inflated their numbers a little bit, and they're probably not as good as we think. So I can really see the Chargers going off in this game. Tennessee, they certainly had a bounce back game against the Raiders last week. Indy, they look pretty good. They got Alec Pierce back. He, as a number 2 wide receiver behind Pittman, he looked good. They got Michael Pittman back. Pittman looks great. They look much better. They upset the Chiefs last week. So this game, these division games can be crazy. I definitely would like some exposure to this game. Pittman, Taylor, Pierce. On the other side, Henry, Burks. So we'll see what ends up going on with this game. It's a pretty low total, so I wouldn't be looking to stack it too heavily. But, if you get a piece here and there, that's certainly a game you can look at. Washington and Dallas. Washington, they came back down to earth last week. They weren't playing the Lions. They were playing Hurts Eagles, and they put a hurting on them. So Washington, going against Dallas this week with Cooper Rush. What will this game look like? It's a pretty low scoring game. I probably don't want really anything to do with this game, minus maybe a Jahan Dotson, maybe a Curtis Samuel. We'll see. Don't like a whole lot here. Now, one game I do like is Jacksonville and Philly. Jacksonville looks way better. Urban Meyer was really bad, apparently. And you got Philly this week. They just look amazing with Jalen Hurts. Last week it was Devonta Smith. Obviously, they have Arthur Juan Brown, who's their number one. It's Devonta Smith. 1A, 1B with those two. Still got Goddard, and then just Hurts just looks incredible as a passer. Going against Jacksonville, who really, Christian Kirk has been incredible. Trevor Lawrence actually looks like an NFL quarterback, and they just look a lot better. James Robinson is not human. So between Lawrence, Robinson, Kirk, Zay Jones, Marvin Jones, they look like a pretty good team. And this game could be a game you definitely want to have some exposure to in stacking. Now, next game we have, top game on the slate. And really, a couple reasons. The Bills, they had a down week last week against the Dolphins. Josh Allen, he looked a little frustrated, a little emotional. He really didn't have his best day, certainly from what we'd expect from Josh Allen. And then you're going against a Baltimore team that's allowed the last two games, 27 points against the Patriots of all teams who really don't have a lot of offense. And then the game before that against the Dolphins, where they gave up 42 points and Dolphins just went crazy on them in the fourth quarter. Incoming is the Buffalo Bills. So this is a game that I want to look at from a lot of different ways, both in my cash games and also some leverage plays in tournaments, because there's a lot of low-owned players in this game that I really like. Secondly, after this, we have New England and Green Bay. Brian Hoyer's in. Green Bay doesn't look as good. I just don't know that I really want any parts of this game, especially with a 40.5 game total. Vegas feels the same way, of course. So, and then we have Kansas City and Tampa Bay, 45.5. Obviously, there's a lot of playmakers in this game. Maybe this is a game that you look back on the slate sometimes and you're like, why didn't we give more focus to this game? I could see this game being one of those games. You get Mike Evans back, right? Kansas City coming off a bad game against the Colts. So I could certainly see Kansas City, the studs coming off a dud narrative. As I look at it right now, I don't want really any interest in this game as far as cash, but in GPPs, I could see doing little sacks from this game for sure. So the next one, we got Minnesota and New Orleans. Minnesota, is Dalvin Cook going to be playing? I don't know. New Orleans is a pretty good defense. Jameis Winston, I tweeted about this the other day. I joked about it. Every time I watch Jameis Winston play, I feel like he is playing Jameis Winston stacks in GPPs. Literally, it's every play he's looking down the field at who he can hit deep. So, Jameis Winston could throw 4 touchdowns. He could throw 4 interceptions. That's just how it's going to be with Winston if he plays. He's expected to play, but didn't practice today, so we'll monitor that. And then Minnesota, they were hyped up all offseason. We haven't seen it. So I don't know when it's really going to get going, but last week was the get-right game, and it didn't happen. So I'm not sure. They're just priced higher than, I really want to take chances with them this week, but there are some low scoring games, so we'll see. Seattle, Detroit. Now, Seattle with Geno Smith is playing a little bit better than you think. Rashad Penny, he's looked pretty good. I do like him potentially in this game. Geno hasn't been bad. I'm not going to have a lot of exposure to Geno, but in some stacks with like a Lockett and Metcalf, I could certainly see that this week. In the Detroit, Jamal Williams is going to be probably mega chalk this week. So he could be 30+% owned. He's a lock for my cash game lineup as we get into that. And, you got to be thinking about leverage. If he's crazy chalk, he could potentially bust, and maybe you do a Goff. Maybe we go back to Goff. He's going to be a lot more expensive this week. He's actually going to be $26 this week because Yahoo, they realized how inefficiently priced he was last week at $20. Somebody told them because they had backups who were $20. David Mills was $22, and Goff was cheaper than him. He was priced with the backups. Well, now he's $26. So those stacks are going to be a little bit more expensive. Amron isn't expecting to be super chalk, though. So maybe you like Goff and Amron. Stacks is like leverage off of Jamal Williams. Now, Atlanta and Cleveland, this is one of the other high-scoring games on the slate. So 49 points. Cleveland, they have some, there's a lot of leverage, I think, to be had in this game. They have Nick Chubb, who's in the Millie Maker lineup 2 weeks ago. He smashed Amari Cooper, has done quite well recently. David Njoku, he's a guy that got a touchdown in his last game. So certainly someone we're looking at the ever volatile tight end position, especially on Yahoo. You need touchdowns to score, to win on Yahoo because it's half PPR site. Atlanta, Cordarrelle Patterson, Drake London, and also Pitts are some interesting plays. So there's a few different ways we can look at this game. There's certainly some stacking pieces in a game that really could be kind of under-owned from what we're seeing right now, high projected, and mainly because of the quarterbacks. No one's really thinking about Mariota and Brissett from, as a top stacking option. So this is definitely a game we want some exposure to. There are pieces in this game. Barkley, I think he's underpriced. I'm probably playing him in cash. He looks really good, and he's still not priced where he should be on Yahoo. Chicago. So Montgomery, we said he got hurt last week. Khalil Herbert came in. He looked great. I want no part of their passing offense. Justin Fields is not throwing the ball nearly enough. 11 attempts a game isn't going to cut it. So you want no part of the passing offense. And really, I want no part of Fields at all in tournaments and cash, whatever it may be. But if Herbert plays and Montgomery's out, if Montgomery plays, I really don't think you could play any of them because it's just too risky. But if Montgomery's out, I like Herbert. I just think he's better overall. And if there's no Montgomery to share carries with, I like him. Now, one thing to note, as I mentioned, you will see in the article, I don't really like playing a bunch of players from a low-scoring game. So you kind of have to take a stance specifically in cash. Are you going to play Barkley or are you going to play Herbert? I'm not playing them both with a low game total on a half PPR site. It's just maybe on DraftKings I would consider it because Barkley gets quite a few passes, but I'm just not playing it. So there are pieces that I like from this game from a pricing perspective. But you got to be careful the low-scoring game playing several players in that game. I don't really like to stack in cash. Pittsburgh and New York Jets. Zach Wilson's in. I just don't like it. I don't know what to expect. We don't know who his favorite target's going to be. I would just rather avoid this. Arizona and Carolina. Not a huge fan of this game either. However, AJ Green's probably going to be out. If Rondale Moore comes back, he could be some good value. Carolina, Christian McCaffrey looks better, but he's still too high price for me. Now they got Chenault in the lineup with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Chenault's getting some looks. I just don't think this offense has enough to go around. I'm not super into this game. Denver and Las Vegas. Now, this is a kind of a game that I think, because Denver's looks so bad, not a lot of people are going to be on. I would not have a lot of exposure to this game, but it is a divisional game. And with Denver has a really good defense. So if they potentially could shut down Devontae Adams, which I do believe they will in this game with Patrick Surtain and just with Nathaniel Hackett knowing Devontae Adams, I do like some Denver in this game as far as, maybe a Wilson +1, probably Sutton. I would not sack him with more than one. The Denver offense just isn't there. But maybe a Wilson +1, or maybe you play a Josh Jacobs in this game, or a Waller, because the Broncos do kind of struggle to cover tight ends. So something to keep in mind. It's one of the higher game totals, and it's a pretty low scoring slate, if we're being honest. And then, so that's going to do it for the main slate. Now let's go over to the domination station. We now have a couple things. We have the domination station active for Yahoo. Now, we're not going to do any lineup building specifically for tournaments because the projected ownership totals, I record this on a Wednesday, they're at 0. So like you just can't play with the optimizer with no ownership numbers. Like it's everything in tournaments and we don't know what it's going to be. So it's not going to look like we think it will. However, We see salary, we see fantasy points per dollars, we see projections. So we'll go through that. So when I go over to my cheat sheets, some things I want to look at as far as quarterbacks this week. There's really 2 quarterbacks I'm looking at because I do think there will be enough value on the slate from what we're currently seeing, specifically like Jamal Williams, to either play Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar Jackson has smashed Josh Allen the past 2 weeks in scoring in a half PPR format. And he's probably where I will go because the Bills do have a lot of injuries on defense because the Ravens secondary is not very good. So they have to score a lot of points to score. And because Lamar Jackson runs the ball so much and he has a lot of floor and a half PPR, and he comes at a little bit of a discount. In fact, he's thrown 10 touchdowns on the season too. So touchdowns are very important in half PPR format like Yahoo. And this is a 52.5 point game total. So I like Lamar in cash. As far as tournaments, I'm going to lean towards Josh Allen just because he has more stacking options at low prices, but also a lot more stacking options at low ownership. So there's a lot of different ways you can go. As far as running backs, I've mentioned Saquon Barkley. I do believe him to be a little bit underpriced currently. Still, he's only $29. As we'll see when we get into the Dom station. In fact, we'll go take a look at that real quick. For running backs, Christian McCaffrey, he's still $38. Jonathan Taylor is $36. Henry is $35. Chubb is $30. So Barkley is still priced under all these guys, and he's actually projected to score more than both Chubb and Henry. And if you look at fantasy points per dollar, these are some guys that you also might want to target too, as you will see Josh Jacobs and Jamal Williams when we get going here. So Barkley, he's underpriced. He has had 6 yards a carry. He's getting 17 carries a game. He's also getting an 18% target share. Now, Sterling Shepard's out. He has a torn ACL. Galladay, do we even need to talk about Galladay? Embarrassing. Tony, is he ever going to play? I mean, this is a guy who looked very talented, but we just don't know if he's going to play. So the offense needs to run through someone more than ever, and I certainly like Barkley. Now, DeAndre Swift's probably not going to play this week. From everything that we heard with DeAndre Swift, he's probably not going to play this week. Jamal Williams, he's already had 4 touchdowns. See, he was already getting goal line carries with Swift in the games. Swift figures to miss. Last week, Jamal Williams, he had 20 carries, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's going to be the chalk. He's only $23. He's the second highest fantasy points per dollar play this week at Yahoo at 0.70 at DFS Army's domination station. He is a lock for me. Definitely the first running back I put in my lineups this week. Khalil Herbert, I said this. Now, this player is all contingent on David Montgomery not playing. So I'll look elsewhere. But as of right now, Khalil Herbert's a lock for me. He just looked better. He's had 7 yards per carry on the season. Last week, that's what he had, almost 8 yards per carry on 20 carries, 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, his average is high as far as yards per carry, and he just looks really good. He cuts fast. He's tough. He's got good burst. $19. Gimme. Again, I mentioned I don't love the matchup for Josh Jacobs. The Broncos actually have a pretty good run D, but he's only $15. And if they are going to run the offense elsewhere, because Patrick Surtain has been a lockdown corner, and Devontae Adams hasn't even had a good start to the season. So I can certainly see why the domination station has Josh Jacobs coming in as a top fantasy points per dollar player. I've learned this in the past. I do not know better than the domination station. Every time I think I do, I normally get burned. So when they say Josh Jacobs is the top fantasy points per dollar play, I'm just going to go ahead and listen to the domination station on that one. So going on to wide receivers, and there might be more value that opens on the slate. We will see. We do this on our Wednesday, so give me a follow at Fantasy Fling on Twitter if you have any questions, specifically closer to the weekend as we dive more into this, as we learn more and more. Now, Stephon Diggs. Geek talks about this all the time. The stud coming off a dud narrative. He didn't have the best week last week. Okay. But it was to be expected. He was going against an elite corner. Well, this week he's going against the Ravens secondary, and they have awful corners. Okay. Diggs is $34. Diggs still has a 28% target share. So he's an elite wide receiver getting an elite target share. This is top projected wide receiver this week with 16 points. And let's be honest, he will probably vastly exceed that if we're being honest. And, that team's allowing 280 yards per game to wide receivers. So he's going to be the chalk. There's a reason why he's about 25% projected ownership right now. Should he not play because he is questionable, I would pivot over to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But if he plays, he's certainly my cash game play. Michael Pittman, I mentioned, he's back. He was back in the lineup. He was back to catching contested catches as he does, 25% target share. He's got 96 yards on average in 2 games. And with the volume, I do believe the positive touchdown regression will come. And he is in a perfect matchup for it against the Titans D. They're giving up the most touchdowns right now to wide receivers. Now, value plays. If you're going to have guys like Diggs and even Michael Pittman, who's a little higher price, you have to find some value. So, kind of as I alluded to with Saquon Barkley, there is nobody to catch the ball. So they have to throw the ball as well. Saquon Barkley could have a big game, but they have to throw the ball to someone. Richie James is only $12. He doesn't have to do much to get there. Right now, he already has a 20% target share, and Sterling Shepard's out, so he might see a bump in targets. So he is the top fantasy points per dollar play at DFS Army's Domination Station with projection of 9 points. And as I mentioned, though, you do not want to – please do not play Khalil Herbert, Saquon Barkley, and Richie James in the same game. That can go a lot wrong in cash games. The Giants offense can definitely sputter, and then your cash game lineups are toast. So that's something you want to do in tournaments for sure, but not cash games. Save that for GPPs. So if you're going to play Barkley, you're probably not playing Richie James. You're probably playing Marvin Jones at $11. So he has a 17% target share in this season as well with Darius Slay. I think Darius Slay will probably cover Christian Kirk. So there's a good chance there's more targets that will funnel to Zay Jones and Marvin Jones this week. He's $11 on Yahoo. So I like it. He is a top fantasy points per dollar play behind Richie James. So 0.748 projected points. So these are going to be value plays. Mooney, yes, but same thing. They're just not throwing enough. I'm just not taking that risk. So maybe for sure in tournaments, you take those risks, but not at all. I want no part of it in cash. As far as tight ends, Mark Andrews, we can't not mention him at this point. He had a 50% target share last week, 37% on the season. He's $28. He's currently 7th in all pass catchers. He's 7th in scoring. He's by far and away the number 1 tight end. He's been in the Millie Maker like 4 out of the last 6 times. It's crazy. Typically you punt at tight end, but if there is enough value on the slate, maybe, like a Rondale Moore plays, if you have a Matt Collins type, you can play an Andrews at $28. Now the other 2 guys, I don't want to punt all the way this week, but if there's Kyle Pitts, $16, and David Njoku. So these guys are coming in at the top fantasy points per dollar play on the slate. And the reason why I like these guys over a lot of the other options is they're getting a good target share. So like you'll see Alberto is a 3rd or 4th guy in fantasy points per dollar when we go over to the Domination Station. But Alberto's target share is entirely too low for me. It's like 10% or less. That's not what we're looking for. At tight end, we definitely want over 15%. From our pass catchers, we're looking at like over 20%. And David Njoku and Kyle Pitts kind of fit the bill there. So Kyle Pitts, 23%. David Njoku is 18%. Now, David Njoku, he's closer to the minimum for tight ends, which I like, but he also got a touchdown last week. So we really do need that on Yahoo. They're half PPR. We need touchdowns. And Kyle Pitts, with his volume, he is due. He hasn't got any touchdowns, but he's due for some positive regression there. So I like Kyle Pitts as well. Now, as far as defenses, this really, last week on Yahoo, this really made the difference between whether you cashed or not. So it might make a difference this week. Let's hope it doesn't, but it could for sure. When you got a defense that scores a touchdown, it will make a difference. But really, Arizona Cardinals and Panthers, this could go either way. You were seeing, as far as top fantasy points per dollar play, number 1 and number 2. So probably going with Carolina Panthers. I like their defense a little better, but it's Baker Mayfield has not been very good. So you could see why both of these teams in the same game are coming as the top, because also the Arizona Cardinals have been very Jekyll and Hyde. So we don't know how this is going to go. You can see why they are coming in is both the top fantasy points per dollar play, and it's the defenses. They have a lot of variance. This is no mystery. We know this. So these are the top 2. The other option you have is Washington Commanders. Cooper Rush led Cowboys. I just don't know. It's a short week. They're coming off a big win against their division rival on a Monday nights. This is definitely, if this one comes in as low owned, the Commanders, I'm going to take some shots here in tournaments. Now, as far as the top stack of the week, we're not going to some extremely inefficient price stack. We are going to the highest projected game on the slate at 51. They have the highest team total on the slate, 27 points. And we got Josh Allen. And really, you could probably pick a couple of his pass catchers. One really of 3, in my opinion. You can pick Gabe Davis, you can pick Isaiah McKenzie, and you can pick Dawson Knox. Now, it could end up being Stephon Diggs, but he's very expensive. And so is Josh Allen. So you're paying almost $80 if you play both Diggs and Allen. And really, they're both going to be high owned. So you would be looking at total of about 40% ownership. So I'm going to get a little different. I'm going to go Josh Allen and Gabe Davis, $62 of $200 salary. It's projected 23% owned. So far less than, Diggs and Allen would be. And really, this game, you will see in all of my top leverage plays, there are a lot of options that I like this week with this game, because outside of Diggs and Allen and probably Lamar and Andrews, there are a lot of lower owned pieces that could have a ceiling type game and really go off. So specifically, if you're only doing, small sacks like we saw last week that took down the Millie Maker, also took down the Yahoo Baller of 166 points, I think was what took down the baller. It was a Lamar Jackson and Andrews stack. So if we're doing a skinny stack, you can go with this in so many different ways. So some of the other top leverage plays I like, and we'll get into this. I'll look in the domination station real quick. This is one of the ways that I look for my top leverage plays each and every week over at dfsarmy.com. Now, if you are a subscriber, congratulations, you have joined a team that has taken down the Millie Maker on DraftKings, hardest contest to win multiple times. You made a great decision. If you're not a DFS Army subscriber, you can currently try out a free VIP membership for a month. Go to Underdog Fantasy. They do player props. They do best ball. You can join on Underdog Fantasy. They do a deposit match up to 100%, and you get a free DFS Army subscription in the process. So use code DFS Army when you sign up. But as far as top leverage plays, now let's do this. Now, FanDuel, this will probably be somewhat similar. Don't use DraftKings, obviously, because FanDuel does a half point PPR. Now, currently, Yahoo projections are not up this early on a Wednesday, but last week when I built my lineups on Friday and Saturday, the ownership projections were up for Yahoo. So it's going to take a little longer, but if you use FanDuel, assuming there aren't any crazy like inefficiencies in pricing, these are going to be pretty similar because Yahoo and FanDuel use the same exact scoring. So assuming pricing is pretty close, you can expect these ownership projections to be pretty close as well. So what I do is I will basically go over and sort sometimes by ownership when I'm like building my tournament lineups. So obviously you have a lot of your studs who are projected, as the best plays and high owned. And then I'll just kind of scroll down and just try to find lower price studs. Maybe that Denver and Oakland game goes off and, Denver hasn't been getting it done through the air. Oakland has a pretty good secondary, so they just ride Javonte Williams, stuff like that. So I would go also, like Aaron Jones, Cordell Patterson is a guy that I'm looking at, Singletary in that same Baltimore and Buffalo game who got a lot of targets last week, so on and so forth. So that's kind of how I spot him. Justin Herbert, some of my top leverage plays. This is a guy you can stack. Obviously, this would be a leverage stack. Justin Herbert, he was not good last week. The Jaguars defense is much better, though. Herbert was hurt. He's only 6% owned this week, projected, and he's getting Keenan Allen back. So that is his security blanket. That's potentially a stack that I would like this week if it's going to be low owned. Jared Goff, we mentioned. Jamal Williams. If the entire field is on Jamal Williams, give me some Goff stacks at low ownership. Specifically, when the entire field is on one player in one game, that's when you look to get direct leverage in that game by playing other players. So Singletary, I mentioned, he got 11 targets last week. We don't expect that to continue for sure. But if this game goes off and it doesn't go through Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, we're trying to hit the other ways that it doesn't go off to get leverage on the field. We like Singletary. Chubb, we've been through this just a couple weeks ago. Nobody wanted to play Chubb. Well, he's projected 5% owned. He scored 3 touchdowns a few weeks ago. This is the second highest projected game on the slate. And I actually do like several pieces in this game. You got Chubb. You got Amari Cooper. You have Cordell Patterson, who's had 21 points in 2 out of 3 games. So if he's going to continue to be low owned, of course, I'm going to continue to play him. So, those are some pieces that a game you might want to target, as well as obviously Amari Cooper at 3%, who Jacoby Brissett certainly has some chemistry with. We also got Drake London. He's been getting a lot of usage. Kyle Pitts, we talked about earlier. So that's a game I promise you when I do the MME strategy review next week, I promise you a lot of the top pros are going to be on this game. So it's a game we want to have exposure to too. J.K. Dobbins, 4%. Again, if there is scoring in that game, it could potentially go through J.K. Dobbins. This is the second week back. He's 4% owned. He's only $15. You have to have exposure to a player like that. Elite player, as far as from a skill set position from the running back spot, low owned and very cheap. So I do like that. We mentioned Amari Cooper, and then Gabe Davis. I mentioned him, 8% owned. Devin Duvernay, Isaiah McKenzie, Rashad Bateman. These are all low owned guys in a game that could go off. We mentioned the Ravens secondary is not good. If the Ravens win this game, they're going to have to score a lot of points. Okay. It's the highest projected game on the slate. If they're going to score a lot of points, the best way to get leverage is to play anyone on the Bills offense not named Stephon Diggs. And for the Ravens offense, not named Mark Andrews. So when we start looking down here, Gabe Davis, he's 7% owned. McKenzie had a good week last week. I believe he scored like 15 points. Touchdown, some good receptions, maybe 2 touchdowns, 1% owned. Duvernay, he's had multiple touchdown games this year, 2% owned. Bateman, 4% owned. So these are the type of guys that we would be looking to target in this game. I think that's probably going to do it, guys. Hope you all have the best week As far as Yahoo goes, be sure to give me a follow on Twitter at Fantasy Fling if you have any Yahoo specific questions. And obviously, we have the domination station now. Like I said, this is something that is a total game changer specifically for Yahoo. There are not a lot of sites that use optimizers for Yahoo. They have FanDuel, they have DraftKings. So this is how you get an edge using the optimizer. Obviously, as I said, as far as projected ownership, going over here and going to Yahoo, you're not going to have it on a Wednesday, but by the time that we get clarity on the slate and we are really looking to build our lineups for the weekend, by the time Friday, Saturday comes, this is something you will have projected total ownerships. And obviously right now you can sort through the top value plays. You can do all those things. You can build the stacks. But once we get total ownerships, then we can start to build our lineups and we can look to smash and dominate on Yahoo. So thank you. Hope you all have a great week. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And if you are already subscribed, hit that notification button so you never miss a video. Hope you all have a good week. Good luck. We'll see you next week.